Welcome to another episode of The Hero's Journey Our Way Back to Wholeness. This is a sacred space where you can kiss your doubt goodbye and embark with confidence and love to your quest to become the hero on your journey back to wholeness. Together with brilliant minds, we venture into the unknown to revive and mend what is torn and to patch what is missing. And today, Siena takes us along, and along with her, we're going to venture into her heroine's journey. First and foremost, Siena is an incredible friend, and she has helped me tremendously when I had some challenges upcoming, and I'm really eternally grateful for you for this. And I'm so proud, and you inspire me so much with your entrepreneurial journey. It's exciting to see what you've created in your life. You are the co-founder of Conscious Creators, a beautiful platform where you have launched YouthfulMind. And this program aims to cultivate like a really good growth mindset and practical tools that you can use day to day, that you also use day to day to really get rid of old belief patterns and to create the life that you really want to create. And I think that's really transformative and really powerful. And I'm so excited to have you here. However, as with many heroes on this podcast or heroines, um, life has been different in the past. It was not always nice like this. So I would like to hand you the word to you, Sienna. And yeah, who were you? Who were you being? Where did the story start?
Oh, first off, thanks so much for having me. It really means a lot. And I feel the same way. You are just such a beautiful, inspiring person. And even this podcast is going to help so many people. So I'm really honored to be here. So thank you. And you've overcome so much too. And I'm so proud to see how it's brought you here. But yes, you're right. It's every now moment is very different. And it wasn't always the same way of being and living. But I think it was mostly just that moment where you kind of ask yourself, is this how I want to live? Do I want to think and feel this way? And do I want to embody this personality? It's not really working for me. And it just seems like most people hit this dead end where
Mm,
they look at everything in their life and the puzzle pieces aren't fitting. And you just start to ask the questions, well, is there anything more than this? And can I live a life filled with happiness, or and what do I need to do to get there? And so I think it was this series of ongoing moments that led me to that
mm,
final push. But as I was talking to you before, it's not really one push, it's many pushes,
mm,
many moments, and it continues to be many moments because you aren't the same person every moment. So
yeah.
I think that's the beautiful part. But that initial huge hurdle, I really feel a lot of people have to just really get to a point where they're super fed up and
Mm-hmm.
just finally looking within. And that's
Mm-hmm.
that's what the case was for me. It wasn't just this happy moment where I thought, oh, I'm excited, I'm going to change. It was more of series of events that led me to question, well, why is this happening? There must be a deeper
Mm-hmm.
reason. I mean, if life is really happening to me, then well, what would the point be if we had no control? So
Yeah,
that's a little bit
definitely.
of what kind of urged me on this
Mm,
path. But I think a lot of people kind of came across this internal growth due to the
yeah.
circumstances. So
So how, just to, for the viewers or listeners to understand, like, what were your internal pushes, or like, how did you feel? How did you think? How was Sienna like back then in the days?
okay, yeah. So I think growing up, I at first was just I was a fun-loving kid. I was, I didn't really necessarily think that I was struggling because I thought this is just who I am. But I noticed patterns over the years where
Mm-hmm.
I became very analytical and then the thoughts became very overwhelming. So for me, in my case, the old personality, again, sometimes it's hard to even remember because it doesn't feel like who I am,
Mm-hmm.
but the old personality was very obsessive compulsive, ruminations, the same thoughts, would be fearful constantly of, oh, am I sick? Am I sick? Am I sick? Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me. And it was this exhausting analytical play in my head. And I was basically narrating this story that was actually creating and unfolding to get me to a point where I had to question it. So for me, it was more of this amplification of these obsessive thoughts, making me feel worse and worse. And I felt more pain and suffering. And then I started to feel very trapped, and out of control. And then that lack of control made the analytical mind kick in more of trying to control. And it's this paradox of the more I tried to control, the more out of control I felt. And it built up until this moment where it was around probably the age 16 where I had a full-blown mental breakdown, the first mental breakdown of many. But I just remember kind of being in my bathroom and just crying and feeling so stuck, and then asking myself, like, well, what's the point of life? What's the point of life if it's going to be like this? I don't want to live like this. And it was that moment where I thought, I'm scared. Like, I don't know how to change this. I don't know what to do. I don't necessarily have the tools. So I went the conventional method at first and tried the therapies and tried the pills for 10 plus years, which made me feel numb. And I feel like if anything, just pushed it, but didn't allow me to transform it. So years of pushing and pushing led me to another moment, but this moment was much bigger for me. And it was during COVID. A lot of people struggle during this pandemic for sure, because you're stuck at home and you're forced to look within. There's really nothing else going on. And so for me, it was that second push. I was doing my master's of public health, questioning my career choices, questioning my path, and feeling like my whole identity was cracking. And again, a moment I had sitting in my bedroom, I had this thought, well, it didn't work for me what I was doing. I've tried everything. What else is there? There's clearly something I'm not clicking in on. And then a series of events led me to have this beautiful friend who was brought into my life, that my mom brought me into my life. And her name's Jody. And I talk about her to everyone because she really is this angel who I guess I called to me and she called me to her.
She was
And
your call to your adventure.
she was my call to my adventure, 100%, 100%. Funny enough, she actually was there before, but I wasn't ready, so I didn't see the alignment. And she told me about Dr. Joe Dispenza, Abraham Hicks, and all these different methods that were the missing pieces, because it was all about inside of what was going on within me. It wasn't anything to do external anymore. No pills, no therapy, no this, that, attacking from all angles. It was, okay, what's going on? How am I thinking? Who am I being? And it was this aha moment where I looked back to my life and thought, I understand exactly how I created this. It makes so much sense. But then, as you know, you put in the work, and then you have to get to that river of change, and it's uncomfortable because you've programmed your subconscious to be a certain way for so long, and then to go against all of that identity and all of that memory and constant repetitive neural circuitry. It takes that will, that conviction, and the faith, to really go through that river change. Otherwise you stay stuck on the other side, and there's never that
Definitely.
embodiment of that new person. So that was kind of a big moment.
When you first learned more about I would say the spiritual side, where we tend to look more within, what were you doing? Was there a practice that you start to build? How was that in the beginning? Like, did you read new books about it? Did you, like, I mean, many times people often come to what's meditation because they come across something else first. For instance, we have those emotional freedom techniques. We have like all sort of techniques that are existing, but I feel like the deeper you read into these things, the more meaning you actually assign to those techniques and the more effective they become. So what was your start before you stumbled across meditation? Was this something like, how did your journey into this more exploring your inner self, like your emotions and your thoughts deeper, how did this started?
So, as I said about the conventional route, after I exhausted those options, actually, I think the first kind of person that I started to learn from was Abraham Hicks. I understood the concepts, but because I'm a scientific person, I needed the structure and the formula. So I started to dig deeper. And then at first I came across, journaling your thoughts, which really started to allow me to lay everything out before even 100% getting into meditation. At least I was aware of, okay, now I can see the blueprint of how I've been. And I really do enjoy writing because I think a lot of throughout university, I was forced to write and I started to kind of be adverse to it. But then when I stopped and the pandemic happened and I had more time on my hands and more things that I explored were more what I actually enjoyed doing, I started to really be called back to writing, but writing for myself. So I feel like that was kind of the start. I did try emotional freedom techniques too, but there was still something not clicking for me. So I felt like I was mindlessly doing it, but it wasn't really working for me.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like everyone's journey, you get all these puzzle pieces, and at first, because you don't have enough, they don't really fit. But the more you understand and delve deeper, they start to come into this beautiful puzzle in front of your eyes. So then when I discovered Dr. Joe, for me, that was the missing component of the science, which calmed my analytical mind because I had the answer. Oh, well, this is
Makes
proven.
sense.
And this makes sense to me. And being in the scientific field before, and I was studying to be a medical doctor at the time, not anymore, I needed the process.
Yeah.
But, as you may know, people tend to say at first, oh, I can't meditate. I mean, I can't even sit still for 1 minute. And my issue at the time, or my challenge at the time, was thoughts constantly going. So I thought to myself, how am I going to sit down for even 1 minute without a thought? That makes no sense. But Dr. Joe really made it clear that it's not about having no thoughts. It's about how can you just come back to the present moment and then keep that. And the more you do that, you liberate and then you go into nothingness and it's easier. So I started actually right after a few techniques of journaling and a few techniques of mantras, which also kind of suit me, as well as Wim Hof breathing, which I still to this day absolutely enjoy and love because it completely kicks you out of that analytical mind. But I finally just sat down and started. And most people may start small, but I'm a very extreme person. So I went right for an hour.
Oh my God, how was that?
Well, it wasn't easy. Let me tell you that.
Yeah.
It was extremely frustrating. There would be meditations where the whole time I was just sweating in fear with all these thoughts. And I just sat there like, what is this over? What is this over? What is this over? Oh my gosh, I can't do this. But then I would say, okay, well, I'm sitting here. If I can at least sit through it, even if I'm thinking, that's a victory. So I started to reframe. Instead of thinking, oh, it was a failure, I thought, well, at least I sat down and took time for myself. That's a check mark. That's amazing. And then it evolved into, oh, wow, I feel a little bit better, like the 1% difference. And that just spiraled me down to going all in with this information and reading all the books I could read, reading all of Dr. Joe's books, and then reading other books that gave me a new perspective of spirituality and the deeper meaning of life. Because I found for me, once that analytical mind was satiated, the spiritual part of me wanted way more. Because I think a lot of people may transition from, okay, I have the science, I have the knowledge, but we're spiritual beings. There's more. And I want to fill that part now. Like I get that the brain works this way and the body works this way, yada, yada, yada. But well, what else though? How am I even existing? You ask those deeper questions, like how am I here? How is Siena even at this point in time? Like how did these series of events even lead me to get here? There's more to this. So then I went really deep into that aspect. And it has grown so much more since then. And I find that there's so much more peace knowing that this is just a moment in time
Mm,
of eternity. There's so much more to enjoy and to follow and grow and learn. And so
mm,
I felt a big shift. It's these constant shifts from science, spiritual,
mhm.
spiritual, spiritual, way more of what I want now. But that was kind of what happened for me.
That's beautiful. When you are looking for or were craving more, you started to look more inside of you, what you really like to explore this realm. Did you dive deeper, like try to let go more in your meditations? And what came across? Because I know that the more you open up, the more stuff comes up too. And even if you are familiar in this journey, and I think this is so important to enhance sometimes because I feel many people, when they first start their journey, they are so frustrated if things don't go their way. It's not unicorns and butterflies. Oftentimes, you really sit in the fire. And according to my experience, I was confronted with some emotions that I never thought that would be there. Anger, jealousy, things that I've probably always pushed down. When they start to rise up, it can be really, really tough, and you sort of need to learn how to ride that wave. So I would like to know how it was for you. You're like, yes, I've overcome the first challenge. Nothing can stop me now. Let's go more in. And then you're like, ooh. And because you have more awareness, you also get more aware of your thoughts that you actually have and the feelings in your body. So I would like to know, how did you never navigate that? Because it can be sometimes super overwhelming. And I feel like integrating this new awareness is also sort of like a process. So maybe you can tell a little bit more about the details.
Yes. Well, actually, you asking me this just brought up a few things that I think are beautiful to know that have helped me recently, but I'll start kind of going back to what you previously asked about. How did I, overcome those processes as they came up? So actually, if you look at the timeline, I know it's non-linear, but if you look at when I started doing this work in general, just the work of looking within, I feel like it's these little phases. So when I went to my first Dr. Joe event, I felt like I had this big moment within the third day where I knew within me I was ready to come off my medication. And previously I tried, and whenever I tried, I would become severely suicidal and it would just be a complete withdrawal symptoms.
Mhm.
And I tried a few times before and then thought, well, I'm not doing that again. That's just way too hard. But I had this fire within me, like, no, there must be another way. I don't want to be this sick person or this person who's looked at with a condition or this
Mhm.
identity that feel like it just doesn't belong to me. And you can know it doesn't belong to you, but if you're still telling that same story, it stays. So I just really wanted to know, how can I let go of a story? How can I let go of an identity? So brought me to the third day of the event. I knew it was time to come off my medication. I don't know what happened. I just know within me there was this deep conviction, and I threw them out the window and I never took them since. But a lot of people think that, and this actually may be the case for some people, which because it's their path they chose, that when you have that moment, it's done. All right, I've
Mhm.
done my work, packed up my bags, everything's just perfect and easy. Everything is perfect and simple, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. It just means that you've unlocked this part of you that allows you to go deeper. But when you go deeper, sometimes let's say you're walking in a stream, right? And the stream's clear, but then you put your boots in it and you release the mud and it comes to the surface.
Mhm.
It's you start to go deep and you bring up these dirt particles because it's the things that were compacted down that
Mhm.
can't belong with this new person, so they have to come up. And so I thought after that first moment I was done, my healing journey was done. But actually it's been around 2 years now. That first year was very intense for me.
Yeah.
I honestly question, like, am I doing this right? Shouldn't it be better? And yes, it
Yeah.
was better, but you're so connected to thinking that you are your thoughts and emotions that you tend to then associate with every little program coming up that may not feel good as, oh, something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong.
Mhm.
But actually, if you shift your perspective to, I'm doing this completely right because it has to leave. It can't belong with this new person. And with chaos, there comes order. And so what helped me navigate, and I think it actually just took a lot of different angles. You know, at first I tried, don't think about it. And then I tried inviting in the thoughts. And then I tried
Yeah.
fighting the thoughts. And you kind of exhaust everything until you, it's actually funny, but it was the things in the beginning that I knew were right for me, such as loving and accepting those thoughts because knowing that they're not really who I am and allowing them to pass.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually what I came back to, but it took in linear time took 2 years to remember that again. And so I feel like that's just the most beautiful part is knowing that you really do have the answers within, but you go through this phase of like lack of trust and judgment, and then these emotions like resentment and why me and why did I do this and the victim mentality. And you kind of wear these different hats for a period of time, throw them out and realize, wait, if I just remember that I am source and who I am is worthy, otherwise I wouldn't be here, all of a sudden you come back to love. Like you
Mm.
just come back to that unconditional love, and that's what for me transcended a lot of these limitations. And yes, there are still moments, and I actually just, I'll tell you, I had a program limitation come up yesterday that I swear have been trying to transform in a year, but then the trying to transform it was actually keeping it.
Yeah.
So it's such a paradox. It's the more you allow and don't resist, you actually change. Instead of looking and focusing on it, then you hold it and it stays. So for me, it took a while to finally realize certain tactics, but ultimately the one tactic that always has worked for me is love, acceptance, non-judgment, and then just allowing, not accepting, oh, like that's how it is. Allow it.
Yeah.
It's allowed to be here because for some reason I need to transform this, and it wouldn't be coming up for absolutely no reason. It was clearly in my field and in my body being held. So now that claiming this new person, that's okay. It's going to come up. And if you are really a new person every now moment, think of how many times you're shifting. There's sometimes things that may come up that you didn't even know, or let's say you have been trying to clear for 2 years, but it's actually, if anything, not the exact same program. It's just
Oh, yes.
a
Yes.
different angle of maybe this underlying program that
Yeah.
takes this all these different little programs you seemingly feel have been stuck for years, but maybe it's just looking at them differently that allows the resolution of the underlying.
Definitely. I super feel that what you just said. I had this where situation where I felt like being super sad. Like when I was going to my first meditation retreat, which is very intense because when you only meditate for several hours a week, several hours a day for 1 week, it's intense. You don't need any substances to broaden your consciousness. Like meditation is totally enough. Just do it long enough. And I came across such intense sadness. I really was shocked about what came up, and it took me a long time to navigate through that because it is not something we talk about in society. It's not something we are familiar with. It's not something that we are taught how to navigate. And there are many, many different ways of navigating through it. So it can be also very confusing when you first start um, resolving those inner conflicts. Like, okay, what is the right thing now? And then suddenly you have 1,000 things. So what I also aim to do with this podcast is to get people familiar with the process. So that's why I ask guests like you, like, okay, how was that actually? So people are not in shock and not frozen anymore when they
Mhm.
actually have to go, or when they start their journey, then they are aware and that things will come up and it will be very uncomfortable because we are not taught to sit down in silence and deal with all the frustration, with the anger, with those emotions that we are sometimes, even society tells us it's not appropriate to feel or to show. So what I wanted to say, I went from sadness to suddenly anger. And I think now I know it was the perfect way to show me or to guide me from being the victim of actually being, hey, you know what? That was not my fault. Like, this was actually very unjust what happened to me. So anger was appropriate. But then again, I noticed if I keep being stuck in anger, I also won't evolve. So it's like those two sides of the medal, of one being the victim and the other one elevating through that, but you're not done yet. When you're done, you can look back without any emotion left, and you can just look at it as wisdom. And yeah, that is what happened. And this is like true forgiveness when you removed the emotional um stuckness that was in your body to this event. And now recently it takes me a lot of energy to meditate because my body is aching and is actually in pain, because these emotions that come up right now, they have something to do with control, with anger and frustration. And I'm just one time very fascinated how this can be all buried inside, like all those emotions, and learning as well to accept that, because I've been also, like we've talked before, I've been stuck in trying to making it go away, which makes things just worse. So it's really a practice, and you need a lot of patience, or you train your patience very intensely, and you train your self-love and grace very intensely, because everything else doesn't work. If you try to fight it, doesn't work. You try to make it, oh yeah, everything is, you're trying to loving it away, it doesn't work. You just have to be present with it and keep taking your attention away from it and just like relaxing. And I think this is like, it's the most simple thing, you sit down and close your eyes. But sometimes I rather would go bungee jumping instead of dealing with the emotions that are in my body.
Yes, I know the distraction sometimes is easier, but it's
Mm,
those moments where it matters the most to really sit down with yourself, because
definitely, yeah.
you can distract all you want, it's still there and it'll come up one way or another. It's going to come up again if you
Mm,
haven't finally allowed it to transform.
mm,
That's something I think I continuously learned. I still learn
yes.
times how you really just have to be present, be
Mm,
present as possible, and also, if in a way, don't really have expectation, because
mhm,
if you have that expectation of, okay, it needs to be gone now, well, that means you're resistant, because you want it to be gone now because you don't feel okay. But if you just allow and know, okay, I know what I can do, and I'm going to do my best here, and that's all I'm going to do, and I'm going to feel so worthy because I'm really just trying my best. And then the more you just feel for yourself of, wow, I actually just sat down with myself and I sat through the fire. Like that's pretty impressive. I never used to do that before. Then you get this feeling of freedom and love for yourself, and it allows it to leave. You don't really actually have to do anything.
mm,
It knows, the energy knows how to move. You just have to get out of the way. And
mm,
that's I think the real part that most people are just learning to do is to just sit down, be present, to get out of the way, and then allow whatever needs to happen, but
mm.
not judging it, not forcing it, not doing all these mental things that just allow you to go back into your analytical mind. It's just, again, being present, going to the heart, and the magic will happen from there, really.
Yeah, trusting, trusting.
Trusting,
Did
for sure.
you reread informations, like just looking at those moments? Because I know it can be very intense, and you're like, I forget everything what I just learned. Like, this feels dangerous. Like, this feels. There were some moments in meditation where I thought, my gosh, I shouldn't do this. This feels very dangerous. And then when I come out, I'm like, reflect, reflect. Okay, I was just sitting here in my room. Everything is fine, still alive. Okay, pulse is still, heart is still beating. So how when you had those time, did something help you, or did you have like a practice? Because it can get super intense. So I would love to know what you did to be it in your meditation, being getting out and getting in again, just to how did you build that trust? Because it can feel like literally you're losing your mind, and it's not a nice feeling.
I know, but you technically are losing your mind to
Yeah.
create a new one. So sometimes I think that that actually helped me. The moments where I felt I was losing my mind, I'm like, well, I must be doing something right, because if my mind was the way it used to be, I would be the same person. So,
Mm,
and I think a lot of great teachers say all these beautiful pieces of information, but until you facilitate it, it just means, it almost means nothing. Like,
mm,
yes, the knowledge is important, but you can have knowledge for the rest of your life, but you never took the first step. So you
mm,
can't expect the change if you haven't applied. That's the scary part, I find, is
yes.
taking that first step. And I think just taking the first step shows that you have trust in yourself, because
Mm,
you wouldn't take the step if you didn't. And I think that for me, because there's a million different angles, I could probably sit here with you for a week straight and tell you all the things I tried. It's just this evolution of the more you get to know yourself by sitting with yourself, the more you really, the higher self, the you that already is all knowing and has all of the answers, starts to allow to come through. And then you apply what's right for you. You learn, you write down this, it doesn't fit the model, it leaves, you put a new one in, you take this little angle, put it into place, you try what others say, but it may not resonate. And then you
mm,
start to gain this momentum and trust, because you're seeing this, wow, like I'm really am transforming. I must be doing something right. It doesn't mean that it feels so easy, but you
mm-hmm.
within you, if you're getting up every day and you are going for it, it's because in your heart, in your heart, it's the truth, and you trust yourself enough to do it. Otherwise, you would stop. Like, you would just stop and
Yes.
give up. But once you know, there's that threshold of like knowing too much where you just can't go back. And that
Yes.
choice of I can't go back and going forward is completely you telling yourself, I know, it's gonna be okay. And
Mm,
so for me, it was just many beautiful, because now I see how beautiful these moments are. Many beautiful moments of really just sitting, listening, and understanding this is not who I truly am. These thoughts and these feelings that don't feel right, they don't align for a reason. That's why they don't feel right. They're not mine anymore. But then honoring that it needs to move the way that it needs to move. But then again, it's this dance of not getting stuck into them
mm,
and then reaffirming them. So, for example, this is something I just learned recently. I was getting up, and the moment I got up, it was funny because I had many moments where I woke up and I was so excited. I'm the creator of my life. I'm so excited. But then there was this phase where I really know I was transforming a program. And because of that, I would wake up and it would be this boom, this fear hit my chest. And
mm,
I would just think to myself, what is going on? Like, I was waking up happy before. Why am I not waking up happy now? Did I do something wrong? Analytical mind kicks in. Maybe you did this, or you should have done this, or why not this? Something's wrong with you, this. And if you allow yourself to get sucked into that and then say, well, yeah, there's something wrong with me. I wake up unhappy every day. What do you think's going to happen? So
mm,
what helped for me was, and actually, I just recently got really deep into Bashar, one of his teachers, who his channeling is just, it's beautiful. It's really helped me. And the one thing that they said was, um even if, let's say you want to wake up happy, and this resonated with me. He goes, let's say you want to wake up happy, right? But you're not waking up feeling happy. You judging that you're not waking up feeling happy and being upset about it
mm,
is expecting and resisting. If you just allowed yourself to sit with that feeling and then knew, well, I know what I want, and I'm so excited, this must be here for a reason. I must be doing something really good for this to be in my awareness. Wow. just that shift in perspective, you wake up one day and you're like, what? And I noticed the last few days, I started to feel way lighter because I started to look at everything as amazing and for me. Because I think the the whole thing of positive and negative can really take you away from the neutrality of all that is, and everything is just isness.
Yes.
There's nothing really inherently bad or good. It's neutral until you put a perspective on it that it's bad or good. So the very fact that I woke up and then felt that and then said, oh, that must be not good, that's what held it, because then I claimed it as something and then allowed it to stay, versus I could have just actually woken up and said, well, this is just a feeling and it actually must be for me for a reason. Then you're shifting your perspective, and because of that, you're allowing it to flow. You're not resisting. And that's the paradox again. Like you just, the lack of expectation, the knowingness that you've changed, not expecting the change to show up because it doesn't matter if it shows up. Then you feel so good within yourself that it shows up. The change shows. It's like,
It's
so
that's
twisted.
the complete opposite what you learn. Like that's the complete opposite what we do in our everyday lives, or like what we are usually doing. And I'm so happy that you gave an explanation about that, because this is so important, because we can get stuck in chasing happiness, and that actually pushes happiness further away from us. So yeah, that is
100%. I know that's again, that's the whole opposite of what we've learned growing up. I mean, for me, when I was in university, you know, you're kind of taught you do something and expect a result, right? Like you study, you expect a result, you take this test, you expect a score, and the expectation is what actually keeps you in that fear of like, well, I don't know, if I do this wrong, then this may happen, and if I do this right, this will happen. And then you predict. But if you take away from the prediction and you just allow yourself to live in the unknown of like, well, I'm doing this for an inner change, and all that matters is this inner feeling, because who you are would be like, let's say the future me of an abundant, successful person. Well, that person hopefully would inherently be feeling filled with love, super happy, confident, and just very content within themselves. So you're doing that, not expecting the outer to change. And when you do that, the outer can change. You're not holding it again in this mold that it used to be. And so I guess school kind of teaches us the opposite of what actually is reality. You know.
Definitely. Thank you so much for the reminder. I needed to hear that myself as well. Um, would you say that, looking back a bit, that you're actually always safe? Like when I look back, I notice, there has been help all along. I just didn't see it with all the mental distractions, or like with all the chit chat. But if I just be still, I probably would have discovered all of it.
So do you mean that, like, looking back in ways where you may have missed help?
No, sometimes there's a saying, we live forward, but we understand backwards. And what
Mm.
I'm recently learning is that I've always been actually safe, even in the biggest dramas or in the biggest challenges. And right now I'm reading this book, and my podcast is based on the hero's journey, like this monomyth, reading about how the monomyth is actually designed. You see, there's always help. There's always guidance, even in the moments where you think you're lost, but there's always guidance.
Yeah, so for me personally, what I've kind of come to realize lately is that if there really is, in quantum physics, there's parallel realities, infinite realities, and they're all existing right now. So there's infinite versions of me and infinite versions of other souls, and they're constantly existing. There's nothing that's either created or destroyed. That's what energy is. It's neither created or destroyed. It's actually just, it's all that is. So everything within the universe already is. So there must be a version that can help. And if I just allow that part of myself by shifting into that new feeling state to gain access, the help is always there. You may not consciously be aware of it, but even that urge to walk down the street left instead of right. That's all help. That's all you calling yourself to the right moment. And I feel like the less we live in the expectation and resistance, the more you really hear that voice louder and louder and louder, and it comes in stronger as a feeling, and it may come as actually just this telepathic knowing in your head. But I think for me, even looking to my past, the moments where I actually did hear it and I didn't listen, those were also amazing lessons for me to just go down a different path. But in hindsight, I understand how it was there. I just wasn't ready necessarily to actually listen and to apply the information. So I think for me personally, the help is always there. The help can be as simple as hearing another person's conversation and then taking in what you heard from them as well, that actually applies to me, or seeing an interaction of someone else, or even looking at a leaf on the ground and somehow having this as a connection of, oh, I should have let go in this aspect. So everything is your teacher and your helper. It's just the allowingness to look at it that way. And the more you allow, the more you connect to that.
Beautiful said. That's awesome. Did you ever feel overwhelmed with like when you learned a lot about this knowledge and like suddenly you see more synchronicities in your life? Was there ever, because I caught myself, oh my gosh, this is like, oof. Well, I don't know where left and right is anymore. Like, did you feel ever overwhelmed and how did you deal with that with all this knowledge?
Yes. So actually, there was many times of feeling overwhelmed. So many times. I still get to that point a lot, actually. But it's just in those moments, I think what helps is, for me, breathing into my heart will allow me to, again, put where you put your awareness, where you put your energy. So it allows me to at least get out of the analytical mind enough to get back to this neutral space, so that whatever I need to do will seemingly come to the surface and it'll come easier. And even if I don't know what to do, I just breathe into the fact that the knowingness of what I need to do will come. And so I think there's different ways that people can help with overwhelming feelings and behaviors and thoughts. But that's just part of the journey of learning what works. So again, for me, breathing into my heart, taking that time. Let's say you could scroll on Facebook or Instagram for 15 minutes, because that's a distraction, and that could take you away from the overwhelm. It's actually not. It's just keeping it lingering for longer. So in those moments where it's so easy for me to do that, I'm like, what if I just make a different decision, like do a breath, or go into nature and take a walk, or journal something, or really get deep into this, sit in silence. When you make that different choice, you right away shift it into a new reality, even a 1% difference. So I think every little aspect of that can allow you to really take back that overwhelming feeling. But also, again, the paradox, just allowing it to be there sometimes will allow it to transform. So it's okay that I'm overwhelmed. It's okay that I feel this way. I'm actually choosing to believe I need to be this way. It's a choice again. And so I'm choosing it for a reason. I can choose something else and let it subside. So just reminding yourself again, for me, this is super powerful. Reminding yourself you always have a choice. You always have a choice. You have a choice to think a new thought, to feel a new feeling. And even if that choice to feel something new may not shift you into that new feeling state right away, the intention of that choice and that conviction of that, you'll see the results from it.
That's
So that's what's been working for me lately.
Yes, I think that's super important to mention as well, that even just the intention, even if it doesn't change right away, your intention and your willingness to go a new way will shift. So just having patience and the commitment to keep on going, this will
Yes.
be changing, because your emotions probably are going to be one of the, I guess, the last things that really change once you have repetitively knocked on that door, like, hey, I'm gonna choose something different now. And I think that's where many people get lost or like lose they feel like, oh, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Like I should be feeling different. I'm actually going after my dreams, but it doesn't feel good. Like I'm actually doing this stuff and I'm thinking differently. But why do I feel so miserable? It's because all the programs come up. So give yourself the grace to take a breather and go easy on you and keep choosing your future instead of going back. Because it's very easy to default back. It really is easy. I noticed that, like, oh, like, there's this threshold where you're like, okay, I've overcome the biggest hurdles, and then it's like, yeah, I think I'm fine. Like, and this is actually probably a moment where it's most how do you say, important. Like you've overcome the biggest things, and now it's like really choosing and choosing and choosing it over and over and over again. Yeah.
Actually, one thing that from what you just said reminded me of something, and that I can share is I find that for me, there was two very distinct moments where I know that I need to just keep going. When things are seemingly really, well, not seemingly, seemingly, because everything is just an illusion. But when things are seemingly really good, most people can just say, all right, I've done it. I've done the work and stop the work. And then they creep into the old patterns. It's actually those moments where I feel the best that I remind myself to keep going, because I
Yes.
know that I created this version of me feeling the best, and I can create anything else I want, but I have to keep jumping into new potentials and new possibilities. Because if you get comfortable, you're in the predictable past and future again. So constantly redefining yourself, I find for me extremely important. So that's the first one. The second one is the moments where it is so easy to give up. It is so easy to check out, so easy to go into those past programs that, let's say you've changed so much and you're like, oh, I'm not that person anymore. It's this inkling of neural network that can just immediately spark again. Because technically, if we are, again, infinite versions of ourselves, the version of the past of that person that we shifted from still exists. And that's why people in the community of Dr. Joe, there's people who can have the disease come back when they chose that personality again, but then they know what to do when they shift back. So it's important in those two moments of when it's really difficult and then when it's really easy to redefine yourself again, because it is constantly what we're doing here is we're constantly growing and we're changing. And so if you're not evolving, then you're not really living. And so for me recently, I had this one specific this intertwined program that had this underlying program that was just shooting out in different ways. And I didn't consciously know what was going on, but I did know one thing. There was a specific choice I kept on making, and I knew I shouldn't make the choice, but I kept making the choice. But I expected a different result, which that's just not how it works. And so I remember the first time I really, really decided to make that new choice. I almost forgot how difficult it could be to make that choice for the first time. And I made a different choice. And it was so uncomfortable because my body, my mind was throwing things at me. No, 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 go back. What are you doing? This is so weird. This is unknown. We're going to die. Something's wrong. You can't choose this. What if we don't know something? And then because of that, this is going to happen.
I'm gonna
All
fail. Like
gonna
I'm gonna
fail.
fail. Everybody, everything is gonna falling apart.
You're gonna regress. That's my favorite when that comes up. Oh, you're gonna regress. It's
Yeah.
impossible. You're not gonna regress. You just shift into a different reality. But then I remembered, and I felt so grateful because I remembered those moments before that I decided to change that brought me right here. And then I remembered and I thought, well, if I did it before, I'm going to do it again. Then that choice became easier, and that liberation from that freedom of energy allowed me to completely, again, overcome an aspect of myself that I didn't think was possible. And the more you do that, I feel like the more you're just plucking away at those parts that don't belong to this version of you. So that's a little bit of insight on what happened to me lately.
Thank you for sharing that and taking us along with you. That's really amazing. And I'm super curious how you redefine yourself every day. Like, do you work on a specific belief system till it's really hardwired, and then you keep that and you just pick up a new one that you want to change? Or do you try to fire new thoughts every day? Like, what is your personal routine in that?
So I think the one thing that has really uh, been a challenge in the past is because I was a very structured analytical person before. So I noticed that I can make myself very routine, like in this work of self,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's again predictable. So yes, there are some things I like to do every day. Like for sure, I wake up and I meditate, but I may do it differently. I may wake up and brainstorm who I want to be, then meditate. Or I may wake up and decide I'm going to do breath before I brainstorm and meditate. I kind of vary in the way I practice, but I know for a fact when I wake up, I really want to feel the feelings of this future before I go on with my day. So there's some structures that I keep because, that's how I choose to connect to my future. But when it comes to changing and redefining myself throughout the day, I don't always do it in the same ritualistic way. So I found that in the past, there were times where I felt called to work at a certain belief system because it was calling to my attention. But then there's other times where, again, this is where trust comes in, where I knew I just needed to practice tuning into my heart because tuning into my heart was going to liberate anything that didn't belong. So I feel like it's this dance of learning what works for you. And now you have all the tools in your toolbox and you can just pluck the tool that feels applicable at the time. So for example, if I'll give you my day yesterday, I woke up and I did my meditation, but I noticed that I felt a little bit routine in my meditation. So before I got up, I did something different. I just sat there in silence, no music, nothing. And I usually do Dr. Joe's meditations, but sometimes I feel called to sit in silence. So I followed, I sat, I tuned into my heart, and I constantly just brought up this thought. Remember the truth. Just remember that this is an illusion. Remember who you truly are. Remember that this existence of reality is within your consciousness. You're not within this reality. It's all within you. And just reminding myself of that allowed me to feel this peace. And I felt more equipped for getting up and being that new person. So I think that your practice evolves in many ways, just like a lot of teachers start to teach based on their own personal practice and they shift those techniques they used to teach into ways that help them more. That's constantly, I think, what we're doing. And so for me, it's now more about yes, being structured of like making sure I'm redefining myself as a new person, but whatever way I feel called to get there, I kind of allow myself that fluid motion of just choosing between things that I find really helpful. So that's kind of it for me.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's
Sure.
always so great to learn and to hear about those things, what people actually do, and also to know, okay, also Sienna keeps herself in check. How do you actually keep yourself in check? Like, how do you, are you so connected right now to your heart that you actually know very well, okay, this is for me, this is the old person, and this is what I have to do to be the new person? Or are there sometimes where you're actually unsure where what you feel in your body because it's like so overwhelming, like with those somatic sensation or physical sensation, and like everything is like, I don't know what is happening. Am I feeling uncomfortable because I'm changing? Am I feeling uncomfortable because this is actually something uncomfortable for me? Like this is actually not meant for me. How do you keep yourself in check to make the decisions for your future that you actually arrive there? Yeah.
So that's a great question because again, within that question, you can get when you ask yourself that, you can get very analytical, and then that I notice, okay, I need to take a step back.
Back.
So for me, I guess the more you practice, the more you really grow that intuition and that higher self connection, because your higher self, whatever you want to call it, source, God, higher self, whatever it is, and there's many different layers, but let's just call it that. It is always there. It has the answers. It knows the future, it knows the past, it knows the now. The only reason why we feel we don't know is because we just lost connection for a second, or we just blurred the connection. And so for me, the more I evolve in my practice, the more I realize that that channel between me and source, God, higher self is more clear. So the information comes in faster of what I need to know at the time. But if it doesn't, um, I just remind myself the things I've done. Like I've done this, I've overcome this, without getting sucked into the past, because that's also not what you want to do. But let's say for situations where now it's wisdom, it's not an emotion anymore. I remind myself it's the same process. It's the same situation,
Yes.
no matter how big or small it is all the same. It is all the same. So it must work. It's a formula. It's going to work. It's the law of the universe. I just have to, again, allow, trust, surrender, tune into my heart, um, set the intention, let it go. And then I just find that it, again, allows me to get right back on that free flowing feeling of, oh my gosh, awe and wonder of life and gratitude. Sometimes for me, what's even more important than the specific outcome is just how can I just be in love with life? Because that
Mhm.
if I'm here, I want to at least feel happy and in love with life. Otherwise, I don't even care for the manifestation, because if I can't be happy, what's the point of that?
Yes, I hear
So
you then.
sometimes for me, in those moments where I seemingly don't know, or I seemingly feel a little bit overwhelmed of like, this is a big hurdle, how can I overcome? If you look at it like this big hurdle, of course it's going to seem hard. So I just take it in parts. Okay, bring
Mhm.
myself to now, bring myself back to my breath. Next thing you know, a little bit more reveals itself, then a little bit more, then a little bit more. Then you're over the mountain, and then you look back and go, oh, well, I did that. So again, I proved to myself that I have this power within me to do anything. And
Mm.
you put that in your bank of beautiful things that you've done. I feel like that's also important to
Yes.
really remind yourself of all the beautiful things in life that already have happened, because then you're priming your brain to see more of the wondrous, beautiful, mystical things.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You said that very wonderful. Like it's so important too. It's actually very simple. Like the feelings, they might be very loud and overwhelming, and there might be super intense sensations within your body. But if you just take the formula, take a step back, take a breather, get
Yeah,
back to the present moment, tune into your heart, let it go. And like, actually, I know what to do.
100%.
Just getting out of your head and into our heart. It's, yeah,
It's the
that's
truth.
wonderful.
It's the truth.
It's a practice.
Practice, exactly.
So I think that makes it pretty much like it's beautiful to hear your relationship with your emotions right now. With life, you seem to be way more trusting, and even if you feel those intense emotions, and maybe they're also not intense, but depending what comes up, that you have actually more trust and more like, okay, cool, I can chill, it is happening for me, and if I can overcome this, there's going to be even greater gifts on the other side, and even greater love to experience. I think this is like very beautiful to hear, because
Thank you.
this is like sometimes I feel like, well, I also was in the stage where I thought, well, how do these people live? Are they happy all the time? Like, do
Yeah.
they feel nothing of the frustration and anger at all? Or like, what does it look like to be on the other side actually? Like, do they still have those moments? Do they probably just overcome it quicker? Do they probably just not let them define themselves? But knowing that these people also still experience those emotions, they just have a stronger connection in terms of they know what direction they want to head, they know what they have to do, they know what is real, like they can discern between this is not for me and this is just me being uncomfortable facing a new situation. So thank you so much for sharing that and talking about that, because it gives like a greater picture of what is one awaiting on the other side, basically. It's like very beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely I think that was the biggest thing for me, and that's why I also love your podcast so much, is because you can really paint a picture of someone else's life, but not really understand what's going on. So you can look at a person and think, wow, what's wrong with me? Like they're happy 24/7, everything's a synchronistic, beautiful mystery. oh my gosh, like, what am I doing wrong? But you
Mm-hmm.
don't know what it took for them to get there, and you don't know what they experience on a day-to-day basis. And the comparison is what holds you in the space of not being that happy, free feeling person that you have the capability of being. And the very judgment of not wanting to ever feel bad, which nothing's bad, but let's say you don't want to feel fear, you don't want to feel anxiety. If you're constantly going through saying, I don't want to feel this, I don't want to feel this, it can't come up, you're holding onto it.
Mm-hmm.
So where you put your attention is where you place your
Yeah.
energy. It has to then manifest that way. You're going to feel that way.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest lesson recently for me was just not thinking that way. Thinking, what would I rather feel? And not judging anything else that comes up, just knowing that I have a goal or this intention, I know what to do, and I'm just going to keep doing it, knowing that eventually, if it's one day, if it's 1 month, whatever the timing, I don't need to know the how or the timing, but it's going to work that way because I'm now placing my attention on something else.
Mm.
And just learning to understand that those seemingly negative emotions and thoughts and feelings aren't really who I am. They're just not the core of who I am. So if they're not the core of who I am, it's okay. I know the core, and so it has to pass, and it's going to pass. And that attitude allows it to pass quicker for me. And I think also just again seeing everything for you, then you don't really see anything as bad anymore. You just see everything as like, what a gift it was for me. Oh, like for example, this is funny, but I almost wiped out getting ready today for this podcast because I sprayed water in my hair. Water was on the floor, and I went and I caught myself. And listen to how analytical old me would have been like, well, if I'm the creator of my reality, how did I create this situation where I
Yeah.
almost fell? What's wrong with me? This was what new me said. Oh my gosh, how funny is that? I almost slipped and fell, but I didn't. The universe got my back. I'm good. And that happened for a reason. So
Yeah, I love that. I love that you said it because I remember, and sometimes I catch myself still like you can get so I'm the creator of my life. Why did I do this to myself? What would I? What's wrong with me? Something like I need to work harder on this program. I need to reprogram this, and you can get in total like and
yeah,
paralyzes by analyzes basically instead of like, oh, that was fun.
exactly. Exactly. And if you see people in the community of transformation who have healed themselves of stage 4 cancer or diseases that technically were genetic from the beginning, I just this is the thought that goes through my head. If they can do it, then I must be able to do it. So I'm not fearful of anything because let's say I created something. For some reason I created an illness or disease, which I mean I've created in the past. Then
Mm,
I just focus on what I would want instead. Because if I created that, I was powerful enough to create that, then I must be powerful enough to create the healthy, happy version of myself. That lack of judgment, I think, gets you to where you want to be
mm,
faster, with
yes.
less resistance and with less suffering, because you're redefining the whole game of it. You're seeing
Yes.
power in the source of who you are versus the human mind of like, why this, why that, victim shouldn't have been me, why did I do this to myself? Instead say, oh, look what I can do, like that's pretty awesome. I'm gonna do it for something else now. that
Mm.
that that takes some may take some training, but it makes a big difference in my opinion.
Definitely. And we also still, it's so good that you brought this up because yes, we are probably adults, and yes, you grow up, and yes, you might have a stronger analytical mind. It doesn't mean that you are not like an innocent child what just did what it knew how to do. And if you don't know differently, and if you're still caught up in a program, then you still did the best within that program that you could do. That's something that I remind myself when I slip in, like, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up. You just didn't know. You just
Exactly.
forgot. Just hop back on and it's gonna be fine because you literally can shift within seconds and then you can shift back again and then you just shift up again. Like it's like just like probably the process, not of holding it long enough, but like the process of how often can I actually reshift myself back and realign to where I want to head. And
Yeah,
that has been like more like process oriented instead of result oriented, because
exactly. And
yes.
that's when the result happens faster.
Yeah.
And something you mentioned before that was really, I think, a key component. Because again, this work is all about everything is your responsibility, right? It's
Mm.
responsibility. And see, look, the thunder's agreeing with us. I don't know if you could hear that, but it's raining and thundering right now.
Okay.
It's just confirmation. So when you get into this realm of responsibility and understanding that you're the creator and you're empowered, if you take it to the lengths of, oh, well, look what 5-year-old me did. What's
Mm-hmm.
wrong with me? What you said about, well, it's not my fault. In a way, when you're unconscious, no, like it isn't your fault. You don't know any better. Like that's like yelling at a kid who, let's say the kid again touches the hot stove, right? And something
Mm.
happens. You're not going to yell at the kid. Why would you do that? It doesn't know yet. It doesn't know yet.
Yeah.
So it's just like you said, I wasn't my fault. I really didn't know. Now I'm aware. Now it's my responsibility going forward
Yes.
to redefine it. So then you take that pressure off yourself and you redefine yourself with love, not this harsh judgment of who you were being, because that's only going to take your past, throw it onto your future. It's the same process. For me, that took a year for certain things, a whole year for me to look and be like, a year straight, I created the past because I constantly was obsessing of why did I create the past? That's a
Mm-hmm.
gift because now I know I just have to go to the future of and bring it to the now to resolve it. No longer judging it and allowing it to kind of go back into a wave instead of a particle. And
Mm.
that's the fun part of this process. Is just it's so magical and it's often for me it's that one lesson that keeps coming up when I finally take a moment to honor what that lesson is and then I transmute that lesson, then it's this amazing wisdom that allows me to use towards all other aspects of my life instead of
Mm.
being so harsh. It's
Yes,
not
we're,
fun.
yeah, no, it's really not fun. And it's like probably because we've been in a way conditioned, like, don't do this, like, oh, watch out for this. So we are
Yeah.
so harsh to ourselves, and it really doesn't help. Like I think I've probably been a master in guilt and shame tripping myself for like a specific event that happened to me, and because I was such in this victim mindset, and I was like, oh, you know that now, and still I slipped, and till I understood it doesn't work, it doesn't get me out of the old pattern. Love is literally the only thing that gets me out of that. And it's not this romantically love. It's, I think I've also questioned myself, okay, what actually is love? And I still cannot really describe it, but for me right now it's like not judging, not beating up myself, simply noticing that I slip back. Okay, bring my attention back to the now and move on, taking my attention away from the old and then just go on. And the more I do it, the less the emotional reaction gets and the less the voice gets. And sometimes it can help to understand why this voice is there. I don't know. Have you had like a greater insight or a greater um understanding about, for instance, if you in the past were guilt tripping yourself, like did you see a greater meaning of this right now? Like can you a greater truth?
Oh, yes, yes. Okay, so um again, kind of what I mentioned before, there were certain lessons. So for me, actually, I'll even give insight if this helps. Um, I created some, I created because I truly did create. I created some health things happening, um, specifically some skin issues, and because I never really had the skin issues, well, not to my awareness in the past, and I was doing the work and I healed from so much. I kind of had this big angry feeling come up of what the heck? Like, you just did this work to heal something. Why would you then, knowing the truth, create this? What's the point? Why would you create this? Like, what is wrong with you? It wasn't an issue before. Now it's an issue. How could you have done this? Why did you do this? And I felt very powerless, because then I'm like, well, wait, am I the creator then? Because I mean, I didn't consciously create that. Why would I have created something like that?
Mm,
Feel something else. This makes no sense. Then I think ultimately what happened is that a series of events through other family members coming to me with certain aspects of what's going on in their life that was mirroring me, I noticed that, oh my, oh my goodness, Dr. Joe specifically talks about how you have this blueprint of your genetics, right? You have a blueprint, and when you're unconscious, you're defined by that blueprint. But when you're
mm,
conscious, go beyond it. So because I was on all these medications before that actually helped the skin, I actually realized it
oh,
was there from the beginning, because then I looked at the pattern of my family, psoriasis, eczema, acne, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was actually a gift. It was there. It was this part of me that I still didn't surpass the genetic blueprint.
mm-hmm.
And it was due to self-judgment of appearance, thinking I needed to be a certain way, look a certain way. And so it showed up where? On the
Skin.
place where you show yourself. And I was so angry for so long, and I could not get past. I didn't allow myself to get past that this was a gift. And then
Mm-hmm.
a beautiful series of events just allowed me to slowly break down that pattern of caring so much what people think, because it's really just a mirror of what I think about myself. So
Mm-hmm.
anything that a person says that may trigger me, I'm like, well, where within me am I believing this? Because it wouldn't trigger me if I didn't believe this. So this beautiful, honestly, year journey of rediscovering this, again, going back to the formula of what even is this reality, what is this knowledge again. I like you said, I actually had to reread books, I had to re-listen to things, I had to redefine my model, go back and do it all over again. And because of that, I actually realized that your model may be missing links when you start the journey, and you go to this point where you go so far, but then in order
Mm-hmm.
to define yourself, you create an experience that allows you to go back to that blueprint to then surpass it. So I see how it's this beautiful cycle of facilitating this beautiful learning experience to make it wisdom, and then it allows you to not create something like that for another thing, because you understand the fundamentals of self-worth, self-love. And so because of that, you're spending so much more time in the energy of this awe and wonder that you can't create a disease in that. So I still wasn't there yet, and I didn't realize I wasn't there yet. And so I think, again, these experiences that we create, the faster that you can see it as a gift, the faster
Mm-hmm.
it's going to transform. But also knowing that if it didn't transform fast, like in my case, it took seemingly longer time, and there's people who take 7 years to do it. That is exactly the right amount of time and the right of everything it needed to be for you to learn that process. And don't look back, or try not to look back and say, well, maybe I could have learned it faster. You didn't, for a reason, and that's going to help you going forward. And that's one of the keys again. It's just everything is so for you that you have no idea it's for you until you look back and realize, how I would have never taken this back.
Yeah, definitely, because it causes us to push our thresholds even more. Without the challenge, we probably wouldn't be initiated into expanding even more. And sometimes, like, we are so used to have like being comfortable, and then you're like, why? And I'm so happy that you just said that. It's because every challenge, when I look back, man, it has led me to even greater trust, belief in myself. And there are also certain, even if like things come up and they seem more intense, looking back, I would never go to the like I've still evolved. Like I'm not regressing. I've reached a certain level and I'm not going back anymore. Now this new things comes up that probably have been hidden there for ages. I was thinking or like breaking my head about like what like you did, like did I miss something? Like, did I create this? No, it was there all the time. It's just now it's the time that it comes up because you're ready now to overcome it. And if we just view it this way, it's so much easier instead of like, why did I create this? But I guess it's also like because these things, they seem to pop up. I've heard that it popped up for many, many people. So it's probably part of the journey to find even more and greater belief within yourself and within like the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, but in like this greater intelligence. And I'm so excited to talk about this because it makes hopefully it easier for other people, and then hopefully the journey for them can evolve. Not that it has to, but just imagine if people knew what the cycle sort of looks like, what can come up, and how to navigate it. If they would learn it from a kid on,
Yes.
how much more their life could accelerate, not meaning in a way that they have to reach something quicker, but just we would start on a very different playing field than we do now. So I'm super excited, and thank you so much for sharing that. That was wonderful. I loved it.
Course. But I love what you just said about not that you're trying to accelerate it for anyone. Again, because the journey is the destination, but
Mm,
you're going to get joy from every part of it instead of judging it. So it's going to be this beautiful process instead of this process where you're like, well, I don't know, and then I'm suffering and I don't know how to transmute this and this is hard. Instead, you're like, ooh, adventure, ooh, another mystery, ooh, another fun thing to rediscover, ooh, and you're just going through life in this, again, in this little childlike state
mm,
the whole time instead of the
yeah.
other.
Definitely. And there's so many more gifts to await, and new things really happen then. It's like exciting to see your life like, oh nice, something new is happening.
I mean, it all is new, right? But it's just your perspective on
Hmm,
what it is that if you look at it as mundane, it's going to be mundane.
yeah.
But if you look at even something like brushing your teeth as a beautiful experience, you're going to get a lot more out of your day than if you looked at it as like, why do I have to do this? That's actually been a fun little trick that I've been doing lately is
Mhm.
just honoring like every little process that I do throughout the day as mystical. Because it is like what we have teeth. Oh my gosh, we can brush it. We have this little device that cleans them. Ooh, I have
Mm.
skin that's protecting me from this. And I can pick up a glass and drink water without thinking about it. Whoa, cool.
That's it can be so simple. And I just remember this beautiful lady that healed herself from long COVID by doing those little tricks. And at the beginning, she also thought, I'm nuggets. Like, what am I doing? But it helped. Like these little sparks of feeling differently, even if it's feels like super weird at the beginning, like, yeah, man, this is a toothbrush, but you just like give yourself the opportunity to feel something different. These little things, they add up and they're gonna help you to change. Like, thank you for sharing this trick. It's like amazing.
Of
I know what
course.
I'm gonna do tonight.
People are gonna laugh when you start looking at something that's seemingly normal and just going, "Oh my gosh, it's a pencil."
The toothbrush.
It it really does make a big difference because then you're in the state of gratitude, and when you're in the state of gratitude, that you're opening up a realm of possibilities for things to happen.
Mm, yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
So,
Uh, there's this one last state, well, not last stage because the cycle is repetitive, but when the hero returns home successfully, he brings back the wisdom he has collected from his journey and shares it with the world. So I would like to ask you, what would you like to share? You shared already a lot, but is there something that you specifically want to share with the viewers, for the listeners, that you collected along your way?
I guess one of the biggest things I guess I that I've learned lately is just honestly lead with love, lead by example. That's
Mm,
it. it doesn't matter what's happening in your surroundings. If you can really stay true to that change of who you are and you can shine bright because of that person you're being, then you're allowing other people to shift and change. You're allowing the whole world to be better. You're allowing yourself to open up to that new version of yourself. And really, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing ever, is if you can just bring that love and example to every single interaction that you have, whether it's with a tree or what, a neighbor, a stranger, whoever or whatever. Um, it's just, life will be much better and so much happier and easier.
Beautiful.
That's,
Thank you
that's,
so
I think
much.
that's the biggest thing, honestly.
Mm, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for being here on this podcast. This is like wonderful. I'm so excited that we made this episode happen. And do you have, of course, I'm gonna link all the your website below, but where can we find you? Where can we learn more about conscious creators? Like, where's the place to find your program?
So I will give you the link, but I can just say it out loud too. If you go on www.consciouscreatorsu, just the letter
Mhm.
u.com, all lowercase, that's our website. And you can find everything to do with who we are as the co-founders, our story, what Youthful Mind is, how we can provide the tools to help shift people's lives. And everything you need to know is in on there, as well as our Instagram, Conscious Creators U, all lowercase, on our feed. That's also actually linked on our website. And then I can just send it to you. So if you want to upload it with this podcast, just to make sure people get the spelling correct.
Yes, yes,
We have
definitely.
some really cool things coming for conscious creators, and as well as some really cool offers and news of what's to come. So if everyone wants to check it out and just stay tuned or get involved, they can always reach out to our email, and we are always happy to answer questions and to guide people along this journey of change. So thank you so much for doing this and for having me on.
Thank you. Well then, thank you to all also the listeners and to the viewers for venturing alongside with Sienna and me to into her heroine's journey. That was really exciting. And I invite you all to just ponder about some things that caught your attention and just think about how you can apply this into your own life. Remember, have a lot of grace and love for yourself. Don't beat yourself into change. We tried it, it doesn't work. And
Doesn't
I wish you a wonderful day, evening, and thank you, and see you next time.